Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is brought to you by the Friends in Recovery community, a thriving network of individuals who are fighting back against the stigma of addiction. Join our hosts as they speak up about the real issues of addiction, treatment, and recovery. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your friends in recovery.
Hey guys, welcome to the Friends in Recovery podcast. I'm your host, Jersey Ed, running solo today. A couple reasons being is that we have a great speaker today, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in a minute. But if you want to get a hold of us, our phone number 800-989-6504, or you can email the show at help@friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. Email me directly at jerseyed2018@gmail.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this show, guys. Make sure you get this show out, and also turn that, or as blah, 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 Beth would say, smash that notification button, guys. It's really important that that you guys, do all that. It helps the show, helps you guys, right? It helps you guys know when the next show is coming on, because we have some amazing information. Actually, we do have some amazing information coming up here in a minute. I just want to, we're going to do the show a little different today because we had an amazing guest speaker on my mastermind class. I do hold a mastermind class. If you'd like any information on that, my email is llwejc@gmail.com, and Carl will probably put it up on the screen for us. That's llwejc@gmail.com, and email me. We do a bi-weekly mastermind group or class, actually, and it's been going on for a while. It's amazing, and that's where this speaker is coming from. So before I introduce our speaker, I want you to listen to this.
Are you a rebel seeking transformation in your recovery journey? Then 366 fucking days sober is the book for you. 366 daily meditations. This book by the SoberPod Recovery Podcast host and professional rebel, Carl, will help guide you towards a new way of thinking and living. Each daily meditation offers a fresh perspective, practical advice, and a healthy dose of Carl's irreverent humor to help you stay sober and embrace the challenges of life without drinking, drugging, or shitting your pants. Whether you're just starting your recovery journey or looking for a daily dose of encouragement and laughs, 366 fucking days sober is the book for you. So, if you're ready to transform your life and become the rebel you were meant to be, get your copy of 366 fucking days sober today. Available today on Amazon.com.
I'd like to thank SoberPod and Carl for writing that book. And if you do get a chance, listen to SoberPod. Listen to SoberPod. Go over and listen to them. They have a great show. And buy the book. You know, the book's amazing. We often read from time to time through the 366 fucking days sober here on the show. So, guys, without further ado, Amy Guerrero from Thriving with Amy. She is a coach. She works, she's a yoga teacher. She does a little bit of everything. She's an amazing speaker. And we had her on my mastermind class, like I was saying before the break. And she just did an amazing job. I'll be honest with you. I think it was one of the best mastermind classes that we had. And I just wanted to share it on here. So without further ado, and me going on and on and on about it, or talking senselessly like I am now, like Jersey Ed always does. But just by the way, everybody, we do miss Dan, and we miss Beth, and we miss Bambi, and we miss Jill. So next week, you guys will see them on the show. I'm hoping to have everybody together and reuniting everybody. But here is Amy Guerrero on trauma and healing through it and understanding it.
Hi, all. It's so nice to be here and feel you all and your lives and what's important to you and the children that you're creating in the world. I have like a special, when I started, well, it took me a while to stay stopped. And in that while, I didn't really resonate with any of the programs that I was being taught. And I went to treatment like between, I can't remember if it was between 6 and 10. Some of them are kind of blurry in there. And I became just like, I was like, 12 step was teaching me if I drink, I'll die. And I was like, okay, cool. Let me die. Like, I don't understand what's happening here. So I would drink to die. And I wasn't meant to die. Like over and over again, some kind of crazy thing would happen. A friend would call my parents, firemen would be knocking down my door. At the hospitals, lots of different times, they were able to just like, they were just like, your blood level, your alcohol blood level is so high. Like, why aren't we don't understand like how you're still alive? And I'm like, neither do I. I was so angry because I couldn't find my path. I had already been studying the nervous system. I'd been studying attachment. I'd been studying like trauma on these really deep levels. And how I became chemically dependent on alcohol was I had this very wise idea. I was very sassy. I was about 37. And I was like, I'm going to heal all my trauma before I turn 40. And I had a list of all the things that I wanted to understand. And the biggest thing on the list was to find my birth mom and to like, just that I knew that was my original incident. I knew that was my original trauma, was that abandonment, that separation at birth. And everything that she put me through in those several years, like unconsciously and in her own patterns and in her own trauma. And I knew she had a lot of trauma, but I thought like, oh, if I meet her, that's going to sail me into my 40s and I'm going to be good. And right after I did end up finding her on People Finders. And I happened to be going to teach yoga as a yoga teacher. I'm a yoga teacher. And I happened to be going to teach yoga in Philly, and she was in DC. And I was like, let's just pull off the Band-Aid and like see each other like ASAP. And about 2 months after I met her, I was chemically dependent on alcohol. Like I leaned into the sauce, like, I was just like, it was my best friend. It was the protection between me and the world. Alcohol was something that I'd been, playing with since I was 11, and it was just there. Alcohol is my best teacher as well, because if I did not become chemically dependent on alcohol, I might still try to be learning from her. And I was like, the spirit of alcohol was here to teach me literally how to heal all my trauma. Not by the time I was 40, but it did happen. And I don't believe that it's possible to heal all of your trauma. I believe that that it's a spiral staircase of life. Like, the way that I like to think about it is that like we have these moments of remembrance of what happened, and our nervous systems get to have a different experience with the original incidents that happened. The more that we learn, the more that we grow, the more that children are like some of the best ways to heal this, because they will reflect to you what is unhealed all day long. And grandchildren, oh my goodness, it's just like your children will show you your spots all day long. And there's these opportunities to remember like, ouch, and meet those younger parts of you, and then be able to learn to hold them in different ways in your body in this lifetime. And it's a never-ending process. My methodology, I created literally from the beds of my treatment centers. I was like, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, but I like this about 12-step, but I like this about smart recovery. I like this about this. And so I just started pulling from all of the different resources and everything that I was learning. And then I started writing something that was really based in the nervous system, in the body, that would work for me, because I remember the moment when I chose to stay alive. I was so drunk. I tried again to kill myself. I was taking like so much Xanax and alcohol. I was just like, why is this not working? I don't understand. It works for everybody else. And my parents had come and like got me from California and like kidnapped me back in Texas. And I don't know, it was like making out with some young kid. I mean, I was just like, what is happening? I looked over, I'm like, how old are you again? And I was just like, what the fuck? This is not working. And I literally just had this moment where I was like, if I'm not going to die, I'm going to live like I've never lived before. And 3 months after my last drink, I started my business and I started teaching my regrooving methodologies at treatment centers and to a lot of men. Actually, my first 6 months was like I was teaching a lot of men's groups, and then they became my personal students, and then the business just grew from there. And everything that I teach is fundamentally about how much sense you make, how much sense your nervous system makes, how much sense every single behavior pattern and experience that you've ever had in your life makes perfect sense for everything. And I love Cole that she gets to work with sex workers and people that are, still out there, and how much sense they make. And that like we all get to be of service in this way of like, we are all on the same playing field, even if you take somebody's business cards and move them out of the way and put them in front of yours. Because that actually came from an emotional trauma wound. I will pull things back and show you the link. I'm very much about like the root cause. And because I teach the body first, I don't spend a lot of time like once we start to regroove the mind or the body, the mind will follow. So one of like the best parts of this work is that you don't have to tell the story over and over and over again. Talk therapy and trauma don't always work well together, but learning to bring someone home into their body can create a lifetime of freedom that, gosh, I mean, I just watch it happen all the time, and it happened for me for sure. So I can tell you a million different stories, but that's the gist of what I do. And it's developed and developed and developed over the years, as my students have become bigger and my school has become bigger. And there's no stone I leave unturned. I call regrooving a new way of life. And that like emotional, financial, like physiological sobriety is rooted in what like really resonates with you each individually, and what you desire, and maybe what you don't even know yet, because these trauma wounds kind of stop you from letting yourself like really feel the world in this way. And I find over and over again that, someone will be in my field for a month or so, and they're just like, here I am. It's just like they wake up and they're like, I have a body. I'm like, you do have a body. And watching someone come home to that depth and get out of here and come here, it's like the dreamiest of dreams that I get to witness every day. So today we have the opportunity to do some embodiment together. But first, I'd just like to hear like questions and just feel where you're at. If anything like hit you in a different spot, if you felt some kind of way, if you felt yourself freeze. And then I'm happy to explain the nervous system, because I think that that's invaluable information. If you haven't had the opportunity, Wim Hof is very much based on the vagus nerve and really regulating from that way. But we could map your nervous system today. We could talk about things. Let's see what feels good. And you can ask me questions. Like there's nothing off limits for me. Absolutely nothing. I'm very open, as he had to tell his business partner. Be careful. Amy will say all things. My Instagram is very interesting right now. I'm having an argument with a few women.
Amy, you talked about the root cause teachings. Can you explain a little about what that is and how that can kind of help and bring us to where we need to be, I guess, or
absolutely
that trauma?
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, none of us thought that drinking or using drugs was like the best idea. We weren't like, oh, let me become chemically dependent on meth and alcohol. Like, fuck yeah, this is going to be the best life ever. No, that's not how it happens. So root cause trauma is the original incidents that happened to us. We now have all the science to show that like in your beautiful belly right now, it's all happening. And these traumas can start in utero. We start listening that young. And then there's the birthing experience where we can have so many root cause traumas. And then there's, being birthed, and like there's 3 children in the house and one of them feels a little left out. And then that's an emotional trauma wound that gets, and there's no way that we can stop all of this from happening. Like, you are all wonderful people. We do the best we can with what we have. However, the nervous system reacts just like any animal would react. Right. So do you all have pets, dogs, cats, animal friends? Yeah. Like, you see a dog alerted to danger, the UPS guy, right? Or the UPS woman comes to the door, danger, danger, danger. They start barking like crazy. They're hot. Their hair stands up. They're like, that's actually a trauma for them. But animals are so wise. They just shake it off. Us humans, we have a trauma and we don't shake it off. We forget. We don't realize that it's trauma when we're listening to our parents fight in the other room, or you grew up with parents that were using, and you're watching this all and you're 2 years old and it's getting imprinted on your nervous system, whether you have the memory of it or not. And those traumas, they build in the fascia of the body, and it creates friction. It creates a nervous system that can't regulate itself. So in that dysregulation, we pull and we look for things outside of ourselves to soothe our system, to learn to cope and to live in the world, right? So we see this with young children where they just can't stop the crying. But you go to them and you make eye contact and you get at their same level, and their system relaxes with the co-regulation of your system. We didn't all have that growing up. So all these original incidents that happen are creating trauma. The trauma gets stored in the fascia, and those are the root cause. Those are the original incidents that then cause our behaviors of escape. And I refer to everything as escape. I don't really use the word addiction. I feel we all are choosing a conscious lifestyle, and we chose escape patterns to escape our bodies because it was just too fucking hard to be in here. And it's so compassionate to ourselves and to others who's still struggling with that, and they just can't be in their bodies. It's too hard. Their mind is telling them things, their body hurts, and it's all caused by these things that happen to us. And the very interesting thing about trauma is that you might not think you have any, because you think of it in like the big T, war, accidents, natural disaster, those big things that happen. But emotional trauma is actually the most complex way to create all of these escape patterns. And emotional trauma is tricky and complex, and it regrooves our mind in these weird ways where we're just like second guessing ourselves and thinking that we're not supposed to be in our bodies. And then people can start cutting themselves or self-harming in ways, pulling out their hair. We can see these patterns so clearly in children, but we weren't talking about emotional trauma 15 years ago. When I started on this journey, I was definitely one of those like people like holding the sign up before anyone. White coats were arguing with me, like treatment centers were arguing with me. I was like, and now it's like, go on Instagram and all you hear about is the nervous system. Go on even Grey's Anatomy, nervous system, vagus nerve, I mean? And when I first started to get sober, I was already speaking this language, and it really pissed off the people in the treatment centers. I'm like, you're not dealing with the root cause. I don't like the word alcoholic. No, no, no. They're like, this fucking girl. For those of you who still work in the industry, you know me. But now you have to talk about these things because, there's so much information out there. But this wasn't happening in 2014 yet. It didn't really start happening. And I started noticing it around 2018, a little bit more and a little bit more. And now, they're trauma training people on staff, which is beautiful. So glad to hear that. And the front line is the most important line to train, I believe. Like the people that are there with us all day, because they take the brunt of our shit. I was always a good girl. I really was, actually. I was just like, get me out of here.
Yeah,
But that's the root cause.
Thanks.
yeah,
Thank you.
things that's it's funny that I'm here like having this conversation right now because I literally today had this conversation with a mental health practice, right? And talking about trauma and talking about like just drugs and alcohol just being a mere symptom of what's going on, right? Or those past trauma. And you're right, it wasn't talked about like until like 2018, 2019, right? And it's becoming more mainstream. But you don't realize people don't realize people's traumas as a child or growing up or even into early adulthood, how that affects them going forward and like the escape like you were talking about of I'm an ex-heroin addict, right? Like you said, I didn't wake up one day and was like, you know what, this is gonna be cool to do heroin for 15 years, let me just ruin my life and everybody else's life. But literally talking to this practice that focuses on a lot of the mental health practices and trauma informed care and adolescence too. I mean, two of the most underserved populations I think are mental health and adolescence, and that's usually where it all starts too. In talking about like the past year being a big growth year for me in sobriety as well as personally and business wise. Ed knows this, Bevan knows this, but I'm coming up on 40. I'm kind of like, a little fearful of it. I'm just a little fearful just because I look at like the span of my life and like the window, I guess necessarily, closing, I guess, and being on the tail end of my life now. But all this stuff is like, interesting to me and but also making me take a deeper look into my past and seeing those patterns and correcting those patterns and stuff that I haven't looked at in years personally, and just the genetical makeup of that and looking at that and starting the healing process of like some of that stuff. So it's just crazy how God works. I mean, I'm going to use God.
God.
And recovery, in general for me is like, it's not a one-way street. You know what I mean? It's not about, being a big book thumper and, hitting you in the forehead with a big book, although that's like how I got sober. That's the beauty of recovery. Is there's not a one-way street, but God just continues to work in mysterious ways for me because I literally had an hour conversation about this topic today and just looking into that and it's just like God's just spotlighting. So thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, you're welcome. And I think there's something really special about following the curiosity rather than like hitting that bottom again emotionally. And that you have that inspiration and that motivation that's moving you towards thriving rather than just surviving. Like, I mean, brother, you've got like another at least 40 years at the rate that we're living these days, right?
No, I don't know about that. Ed last week put up a average lifespan
76.
77.
Yeah. It went up.
Either way.
Yeah.
It's less than 40 years, but it's okay. It's like normal insecurity. Like my thing is like, ever since I was a young kid, I've always been insecure. You know what I mean? And I never really like took a deeper look at that,
Yeah. Well,
And
insecurity is a nervous system thing, actually.
it is. Yeah, it is,
Yes.
But it's just great, man. Like learning's great and healing is great. And pain is great because you learn from pain. So yeah, I can't tell you how elated I am to be here tonight.
Beautiful.
So.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, and I think, the nervous system, when we learn these like different states that our body goes through on a regular basis, several times a day, then there's this big freedom in like, it doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be painful when we reach that collapse stage. Then we can actually start to learn of like, oh, I can interrupt this. I can um I can have more compassion for myself for the freeze that my nervous system feels when I feel like a pang of remembrance of shutting down when I was a little boy or a little girl, and I didn't know what to do. And so I created this insecurity. I'm afraid to speak in front of groups. I'm afraid to say this. I'm afraid to use my voice. I'm afraid to all of these little things that we call our personality are actually just nervous system adjustments. And once we can attune our system, then one of the things that I teach is that I can teach your system to become unoffendable. And being unoffendable in the world, where people get offended very easily, there's something beautiful about being able to stay in your body and watch everything go down and still have access to the smarter parts of your brain and the sequencing parts of your brain, so that you can ask great questions, so that you can like hear that voice in the back of your head going, this isn't really about me. Like when your kids are screaming and you're about to give birth and you're wiping bums again and your wife sees the cold tank on the lanai. How do you stay in your body and not become defensive? Because defensiveness, resentment is actually less about this and more about your body and more about your nervous system. And I think when we try, or I know when we try to think our way through it, it's harder, right? And then we start on this like self-blame and self-shame loop rather than this like, I want to be free from this resentment. Like, I mean, the way resentment feels in the body is disgusting. It's so spirally and weird, and your organs feel like so tense, and you're like, I'm going to throw up, but I'm also going to like fight and like, when we can learn to just not, then there's just a certain freedom in that. And it's not that you don't get angry and experience all these emotions, but they just don't take over your system. Yeah. So,
Amy, I experienced that from everybody knows my story on here. I'm, recovery, long-term recovery, but in 2020, February of 2020, I had another life-changing experience. And, I think that's when we met a little bit after that in COVID, but I ended up, kind of having this life-changing experience where I'm into yoga, meditation, breathing, the cold dips and everything to get me out of those resentments quickly. Like, especially the breathing exercises, like that helps hugely. And everything you were just saying, um, I don't get into those pissing matches anymore, whatever the fuck you want to call them. I call them pissing matches. Will I start whipping my dick out to start pissing? Excuse me, ladies, but but I stop. And it's like it's not worth it, and I'm just done with it. And I know what it does to my body. Like, and like now you're saying this, I know what it does to my body. I know what it does to my mind, and I know where I'll go if I get into that rabbit hole or into that pissing match with whoever. I don't care if it's the clerk, if it's my wife, if it's a guy at the gas station, or the doorknob that I get pissed off every once in a while because it gets stuck. I just don't go there anymore. And I quickly, and I love what you said. We still happen to go to those places, but we don't jump in or dive in or take that leap into that next realm. And meditation and breath work and tapping, huge part of I don't go down those rabbit holes. I mean, a huge part. So
yeah, all nervous system regulators. Like those are all, they weren't marrying it to that language at first, and now they're marrying it to that language, because it's just like when we learn, the right pressure points to tap, and like we start these rituals, then our nervous systems naturally downregulate, and we can go from a high sympathetic fight flight into a more calm sympathetic. Like we're all in a sympathetic state right now because we're all up and at 'em and making eye contact with another, but this is a blended state of ventral energy and sympathetic energy, and all of these tools, breath, sound, and movement. Like if you're ever in a pickle and you feel yourself about to like blow fire or whip out your dick and start a pissing match, whatever it is you're doing, then it's just like, where's my breath? Can I make some sound? And can I move in some way? Like wiggle your hips, shake your hands, just do all three at the same time, breath sound and movement. Like I call myself a noisemaker because I'm just like, I do not hold back. Like wherever I am, you can hear me in the Whole Foods, you can hear me in the yoga class, because I'm just like, I don't care. Like I have earned my right in this body, and you are going to hear all the noises my body makes. And there's so much freedom in it because it releases all that stuff that I was talking about earlier that gets stuck in the fascia. But if we're not doing that, then it's getting stuck again. And, the freeze response is something that I think is really relevant for us to talk about today, because the freeze response is one of the trickier ones. So I'll just explain the nervous system in 3 states. And you can see on that sheet that Ed emailed you, there's a ladder, and then there's 3 prongs to the ladder. And the nervous system has 3 states. The state that the nervous system first started with is the freeze state, is that like, and the freeze state is very tricky. It's very subtle, because have you ever been like mid-sentence and then somebody else says something and then you lost your train of thought? Yeah, you're like, I just went blank. That's actually a freeze, a subtle freeze response. And it happens often around the things that are most important to us: money, sex, intimacy, right? Like hard conversations with our partners, where we're just like deer in headlights. And that freeze response is the hardest, like state, it's called the hardest state for the nervous system to come out of. So some people can stay in a functional freeze where you're moving through life, but your nervous system is partially frozen. You look productive. You look like you're there, kind of like a blackout, a brownout, which we're all familiar with, right? Like it's like you're up and at 'em, but you don't remember anything because you're not fully there. You have no access to your prefrontal cortex. And the freeze response, like I just get really activated around this, because if I notice somebody in a freeze, then I stop talking and I like wait until I can feel them start coming back. But a very great manipulative tactic that the world uses is when they see someone in a freeze, they sell them something. Car salesmen, people that call you late at night trying to sell you shit, right? Like they freeze your system. And then all of a sudden you're saying yes to something that you meant to say no to. And, this is so, so, so common. And it's creating emotional trauma because then you don't trust yourself. And it's like, oh shit, why did I do that? Well, you make sense. Your nervous system was frozen. You had no access to your prefrontal cortex. To be expected. So from this freeze response, then we evolved, as humans evolve, and the fight or flight part of our system was created. So I always like to give this example as like cavemen. Like first, when the dinosaurs came, they were like hiding and just sitting still. Then a few, like I think it's like 100,000 years later, it's like it took us a long time to evolve. I can't remember the exact number right now. And we had the fight or flight. So then they started throwing rocks at the dinosaur and running from the dinosaur. And then they realized that they could kill and eat the meat of animals. And so once they started eating the meat of animals, then our body started to change more and more. We evolved more into this human form. And not too long ago, actually, Stephen Porges and Peter Levine were walking around San Francisco University, and they were talking about bilateral stimulation. So y'all have heard of EMDR, where like you follow a finger, right? So any kind of tapping, that's a form of bilateral stimulation, but so is walking. And they were walking, and they're like, we've evolved as a human species to have a third part of the nervous system, which is the safe and connected part. So right now, we're all in this like ventral blended state of like, we're making eye contact. We're all kind of leaning in together. Like we're feeling the safe, connected ventral place. And the safe, connected ventral place is the only place where we can actually like really feel our creation, feel our like desire, that's where we go beyond surviving into thriving. And unfortunately, there are many, many, many humans out there that have not ever experienced a ventral state, that they've just been stuck in a frozen state or stuck in a fight flight state for many, many, many years. And then hence escape mechanisms like Netflix, like the internet, like gaming, like heroin, that they make sense, right? Because it's going to upregulate or downregulate your nervous system. And if your nervous system is stuck in a state, why not use some kind of drug to change it, right? And that's what all of these prescribed medications do as well, is they downregulate and upregulate the system to create new neural pathways like SSRIs. And oh my gosh, there's so many medications now. I have I get to witness a lot, but I truly believe that the body wants to find its own ventral state. And if we commit to learning our body, then if medication is still necessary, great. But there's sometimes this beautiful transformations that can happen that don't require medication anymore. And where you thought you had ADHD, you actually just had a nervous system stuck in a state of fight or flight. And when you learn to downregulate and like really be in your body, then you're like, oh my gosh, I can focus. I can turn on some music in the background and I can work for 20 minutes straight. And ADHD was actually not the right diagnosis for me. I mean, and sometimes it is. Every body is a unique body. So that's it. There's just so much freedom in learning this, because then you can just be like, I'm frozen. I can't make any decisions right now. Or I'm in a big old state of fight or flight. I need to go have a pissing match with someone safe. Right. So Ryan and Ed, y'all can get on a call and just be like, rah! And like women, for us, like having little rage parties together, like stomping our feet, like letting that energy out because it's just stuck in there. And then we give ourselves this opportunity to be like a 2-year-old, because a 2-year-old does it every day. And then we feel better and we're like, oh, ain't nothing. I was about to whip it around in my mind for 3 days straight. And instead I'm going to go have a little rage session with some pillows in the other room and listen to some music, or go into your car and scream your lungs out while you're driving and nobody can hear you while you're listening to loud music. And they're like, sometimes tears will come, like the underlying emotion that wants to be released and completed will complete. And trauma is basically incomplete nervous system responses that get stuck in the fascia. I have so much to talk about. So if I blow you out in any way and I say things you don't understand, just stop me, because I can go on and on.
No, this is wonderful, guys. Anybody else with any questions or any want to kind of share?
I wanted to share. So I wanted to apologize. One, I know I wasn't muted for a second, and I think my daughter was having a moment. But my phone died right when you were sharing. And it's funny because I always get something so great from this call. But like right before you do it, you're like, oh no, like I missed my daughter tonight, getting her to bed, like guilt, shame, blah, blah, blah. But hearing you talk, like I'm really excited about you sharing. Because I just I don't know, I've grown differently in the past couple of years and really have been seeking. When we're in pain, I feel like we seek out other ways or what works for us and like how to heal. So I've been really put in some like horrible situations and just traumas, right? Like, and they're all coming out at the same time from other things. So I've been seeking, and I've looked into like shamanism and meditation, and it's not stuff I always talk about in the field, and just different things in EMDR. And so what you're saying is like beautiful. And it's funny because I was just talking about with a friend yesterday how the word alcoholic, because I was taught for so long in AA, and I love AA still, right? Nothing bad, but how, I'm an alcoholic, this is it. But like, it is so, can be really awful to say that. So just different things. So I'm connecting to everything. But I wanted to also apologize for having my phone died. And I was like, I want to be on this. Like, I want my camera on. I want to hear her. But I missed that. So I want to hear the rest of your story. It cut off then. You don't need to go over it again now, but with your mom when you met her and you went into it. So did you get into, I'm curious, like, when you found this healing and like the nervous system, like what are some of the modalities you guys use? Like, so I heard the tapping, the EMDR. Like what have you found or what do you use in your practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. It depends on what someone's system needs at the time, right? Like, if someone's been in a freeze, and so I'll just give this to you blanket so everyone can learn from it. And then I'd love for you to ask a question specific to you, because then I can like give you something for you. But if someone's been in a freeze for 15, 20 years of their life, like we can't give them too much all at once, because to take someone out of a freeze into a high sympathetic state, because that's usually what happens, like the system will jump from that like frozen then into like I gotta do everything right now, and I'm just like whoa, we got to titrate, like we got to go slower, even though you're going to have that energy. It's just another push of the nervous system that's trying to find its way to the ventral state. And so it's really important, in my opinion, and how I teach, to just like really offer the nervous system what the just right spot is for the nervous system in the moment. And our nervous systems are constantly changing states, right? So to expect to be in the same nervous system for longer than like 15 minutes, this state for like 15 minutes is just unreasonable. Like we're going to hear a noise outside. Our nervous systems are neurocepting safety, danger, safety, danger, safety, danger, safety, danger, like all the time without our consciousness. And so, it really becomes this game of like playing with your own system. I always say, like, when I help people build their businesses, and I'm like, quit buying all that shit. The only system you need to know is your nervous system. When you learn your nervous system, that's the only system you're going to need for your business. Right. And then you'll be able to make really great decisions with your prefrontal cortex on the next thing to invest in. But it depends on where you've come from. I have a lot of people that are super high sympathetic, and they're always on the go, and they're always going. They're like, oh my God, I do everything. I'm like, and when is the last time you've rested? Right. Rest is very uncomfortable from them. But if I give them 30 days of rest, they're going to like go bananas. And so we have to titrate rest in until rest becomes a way of life. And so it's really working specifically with your body as it is in the moment. And then, yeah, breath, sound, movement, like, I mean, every single kind of modality that you can imagine, I use. I mean, I do a lot of genital work with both men and women. I do a lot of deep shamanism work. I do spiritual work, but like everyone's system isn't going to acclimate to all of those things right away. And so it's like little bits at a time of what feels good. And one thing that I really like to teach is like, let it feel good for a while. Like, don't jump off the spot because you get bored, right? Let it become a way of life where you can attune your own system with making your exhale longer than your inhale. And that becomes so attuned that you don't even think about it anymore. And you naturally start making your exhale longer than your inhale. And you naturally start doing these things. I think that like shiny object is really like, it's what our whole world is all about. And so it's just like, we want to jump to the next thing to try it out. And then we don't give the nervous system enough time to acclimate to something, to like let it feel really juicy and yummy and good. And then it doesn't become a way of life because we just keep jumping to the next thing. So I just feel like I could go on and on. Here, I'll give you this one more thing. And I've been collecting data from my students for a really long time on drug of choice, on their original incidents, on like their attachment wounds. So if they're anxiously attached, if they're disorganized, if they are avoidant, and knowing all those things about each of your individual systems, just knowing that can set you free and tell you what modality is going to work best for you. Right? Like people who used alcohol are very different than people that used meth. And their systems are very different. And so I treat their systems very differently based on what they were trying to achieve with the drug of choice. and then with their original incident, what they were trying to achieve, and then with their relationship patterns, what they were trying to achieve. And so you take all of that and then you make this yummy, yummy gumbo that's like, Sally, here's your gumbo. This is specifically made for you, woman. Like, enjoy it. And you're like, oh my God, this is the best gumbo I've ever tasted, because it's like really formulated for you and everything that you've experienced in your lifetime. And then Bevan, we do the same for you. And so there is that fucking around and finding out, right? It's like, and if it doesn't work for you, drop the rock and move on to the next thing. It's just like, I'm just like, if you know right away that it's not for you, drop it and move on to the next thing. Don't try to hold on to it, right? Don't try to force it. When we're using force, we're going against the natural thing that we're trying to heal. And our world teaches us to use force. And it's like, it ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work. It's just gonna cause more trauma.
I'm going to throw people pleasing in on that.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah. People pleasing is a big, big, big. And it's an emotional trauma wound. It's a survival strategy. And so those of you who feel that you have that in you, like, just think like, oh my gosh, this is my best survival strategy. Of course I'm a people pleaser. It's kept me alive for so long. And I'm willing to start titrating it out of my life. It's not going to happen overnight, but I'm willing to start practicing. Like, I am the most important person in my life, because without me alive, my children won't be alive. They won't get fed. They won't like the hierarchy of needs is like your needs, God, in my opinion, and then your relationships. And like taking care of yourself first is everything. And your nervous system is rippling in affect to every nervous system. And so many of you are of service. Dental hygienist, my goodness, everyone has dental trauma. Like, you are the front line to changing people's relationship with their oral health care, which is their heart health care. Like, you have a very important job, woman. You're not just a dental hygienist. So are you kidding me? Like, everyone has dental trauma. That's such an important job, because you're the one really with that soft touch, like changing their whole experience. And because you've been through what you've been through, oh my God, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Amy, I think what you're sharing is totally fascinating. So my question, that just blew my mind when you said like you would use a different modality based on, I'm an alcoholic, I have trauma, and I suck at relationships. So what's the feedback that you get when you give an individual, and how quickly do you see a change in an individual when you give them, this is what you should be doing? If you have any feedback on that, that would be helpful.
Oh yeah, beautiful. So if someone commits to I call it their mat, like if someone commits to their mat, we'll start seeing changes in as little as 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, like with alcohol, we're usually trying to downregulate our systems. So what we know about a system that has used alcohol is that the system has probably been on high alert, like really like bracing for impact, like looking for, scanning the environment for danger, like feeling like, oh, I just can't relax. I can't relax. No matter what I try, I can't relax. A lot of times, if that pattern is there, then it creates an anxious attachment in our relationship. So we are in more of our controlling energy when we're with men who would really like to feel their masculine energy, but they can't feel their masculine energy because we're like, I got this, I can do this. Da, da, da. They're like, how the fuck do I actually show up for this woman? Because she can do everything. And so it's just like that I call it full approval. When you can learn these things about yourself and be like, I fully approve of the fact, like for me, I had a highly sympathetic nervous system. I was constantly like thinking that I had to be moving because I was so afraid that I was going to be abandoned. Right. And so if I kept moving and I kept doing, then I was proving my value to everyone around me and they wouldn't leave me. Like that was my whole story. And so as a woman in relationships, I was terrified of being left. So I would be disorganized. I would feel them pull away and then I would get anxious. then they would come towards me and then I would pull away. And they're just like, oh my God. I was in a relationship for like 20 years with one person. And, you know, we got to work through a lot of this together, but it's just like, it was really hard for him to make me happy because I was constantly moving the target. And after we stopped using alcohol or drugs or whatever your DOC was, like, we still have these behaviors and patterns that we created for those years that we were in that dysregulated state. And so it's like the first step is fully approving that that is your pattern. It's not who you are. It does not define you. It doesn't mean anything about you. It's not a diagnosis. It's not a death sentence. It doesn't mean you're going to be alone forever. It's just your pattern. And when we start to relate to these things, it's like, oh my God, this is just my pattern. Then I come up, my first dates, I say all of this to people. I put it on my dating profiles and just like, yo, like this is what, these are the things, like, do not withhold from me. You withhold from me, I will be able to sense it because I am keen at being able to figure that out. And, you know, knowing these things, Cole, about yourself, accepting them, fully approving them internally, and then showing up on the external in full approval of yourself. Like, that can happen in as short as 3 months to have that full cycle if you devote yourself to these practices. And then you go back out into the dating world and you're just like, holy shit, I can hold myself here. Like, the same triggering thing will happen and you're just like, I'm not leaving my body. Like, I know what I want. I know what I desire. I'm clear. I can be here. And there's this level of energy that moves through your body that doesn't get stuck. And so, yeah, like, knowing all those things is super liberating.
Do you do workshops yourself? Like,
absolutely.
Do you do them on Zoom or are they in person? And first of all, I thought you were 20. So the fact that you are speaking of a relationship when you're 20, like,
oh no, I'm 48. Yeah, I'm 48.
God bless you. Oh my God.
Thank you.
You are richly blessed.
It's because I don't have kids and I've never been married. And I partied like a rock star in the right age time.
So you do offer sessions, Zoom or in person?
I work mostly on Zoom. Yep. I have a school called the School of Regulation, and then I have 2-year-long programs called Roots, and Roots is like where you grow these roots. Mm-hmm. And then I have another program called Lead with Love, and Lead with Love is like when you're taking things to the next level and you're really refining your relationships and your business and your life. Like, I do the work of Roots every day in my own life. I practice absolutely everything I teach. I never, ever, ever give a suggestion that I don't practice. Like, it's so important. And yeah, they're open for enrollment all the time. So you can come check it out.
And where would I find your information for this?
I can have Ed send it out in an email.
Please, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
awesome.
It's so fun to talk about this.
It's an amazing night. I'm just so happy that I'm here.
Thank you. Lovely. Awesome. Yeah. Lily's happy that you're here too. My dog just came to join us. Oh, you can't see. There she is. Oh. Any other question? Or Bevan, did I answer your question? Did you want something for yourself?
Yeah, it was perfect. No, and then Cole asked my other question. I'm going to reach out as well for some healing and growing.
Yeah. And I just, something that I did that I found what was necessary in my groups was to break the men and the women up. So we all meet co-ed, and then I have a group for men, and it's called Erect. And we really work with, it was last night, and we really work with them and their stuff. And then we open is for women, and we really let things open. And like, I teach a lot of womb work and just that relationship with your cock and your relationship with your pussy, just to be quite frank. Yeah. So, I mean, I just go there and really teach breath work and how to hold yourself there in your own embodiment. And it's a great way to release trauma, because so much gets held in that hip pelvic perineum area And when we can learn to work through that on our own and have that intimacy with ourselves, whew, it'll change your life.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I feel like maybe sometimes in the behavioral health world, and maybe it's just me, right? Like as I'm growing, but you can be pigeonholed into thinking like specific modality for specific, I don't know, right? Like a diagnosis or what's going on. And it's sometimes hard to get down with that, right? Because everybody is so different. It's very intriguing. I'm really glad that I was on tonight as well. And the breath work I'm excited for because I used to do it. I forget what it's called, but it's one where you're breathing loud. I'm a loud breather too, or a noisemaker, and my husband's especially pregnant. It's awful. My husband hears it all the time. He's like, "Oh my God." And my daughter started to mock me, going, "Hey, hey." And I was like, "Oh, I'm doing that. I didn't even realize." But I've done the intense breath work a few times, and I forgot what it's called, but where you're like and like just making these noises. And I've never felt, and I don't know why I didn't. Well, it's kind of what you said, like it's easy to run from something and move on. That's what I think I do, right? Let me run from this and move on before I really, besides like recovery and healing, like that's been good, but I still am keep seeking for what's going to work. But when I did that, I felt all of the trauma come out. And I felt not all, but I felt it was just like a weight each time, sobbing, incredible. And it's like, well, why don't I continue that? Like, why don't I find that class again? Why haven't I done that? But maybe that's fear too, right? Like we get scared of dealing with it or feeling that pain at times.
Well, Bevan, no, it's for every nervous system. And thank you for bringing that in. Because like anything that you hear tonight, please reach out to Ed for my information because when we have a big opening, so like you do the orgasmic breath and you're like, I mean, like everything starts to tingle and like, you're just so in touch. And then all of a sudden you're crying and you don't really know why. And the mind wants to know why. And it's like, it's not going to know why because we don't need to know why, but you're trying to figure out why. And then you're not held in the integration. And this is why like, any kind of psychedelics therapy that people do, like I'm like, oh, we've got to land somewhere after that. And the reason my programs are a year is because after we engage in these things, we want to integrate it. And a nervous system that has experienced a big opening and doesn't have somebody to come in and hold it, just like a child when it comes into the world, it's not going to want to go back. You're an animal. So your body's naturally not going to go back and it's going to look for something else because you're unconsciously afraid that you're going to experience all that opening again and you're not going to have anyone to come and scoop you. And that's why I created the year-long everything because I was just like, no more 3 months. No, it's just like, if you're in my space, like we are going to integrate. We're going to create a new way of life. And it takes that much time. And in those times, people might do an MDMA therapy or a psychedelic experience. And then they come in and they land. And I'm like, all right, what happened? How do we integrate this? And I don't let them off that mat because it's not, you didn't go out to have that experience to just have it one time. You had it to create a new way of life. And a new way of life takes commitment and time. And it's a journey and we're going to wobble and we're going to fall and we're going to do weird things. And then we're going to like come back and then we're going to go away. And I think it's like a forgetting and a remembering process. Forget, remember, forget, remember, forget, remember, forget, remember. Have another kid, forget for like 6 months, 9 months, like be at the end of your pregnancy and be like, I can't even remember my name. Yeah. So it takes time. And, the cool thing is like this core group, as y'all have called yourselves several times, like everyone here is just like so committed to be alive. I like to say, right? It's just like if we got this right, let's like do the thing. Oh.
Guys, does anybody else have any questions before we stop the recording and we can finish up the meeting on the other side of the recording before we close? No, we're good. Amy, real quick, just so that we have this on here, website and an email, and then if you don't mind.
Yeah. So you can reach me. Instagram is the best way to reach out to me. It's Regulate with Amy. Regulate with Amy. So my website, my Instagram, my Facebook, everything is Regulate with Amy. And that's the best way. Just send me a direct message and get a hold of me that way.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Amy. We appreciate it. And please reach out to Amy. If you guys have any questions, please email me. I will definitely be able to get you in touch with Amy if you can't get on her website or if you have more questions. And I'm going to close the recording out, and we will be this will be on our YouTube channel, and so and we'll just go from there, guys. So thank you, Amy, and we appreciate it.
This concludes this episode of Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates, and enjoy free access to twice daily support meetings. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.